I know it has been an extremely long time since the last time I've done a video. I apologize for that on my part. It's just been a lot going on in my life. But I've had a few subscribers request me to do another harsh truths of the Selena story. I said I wasn't going to do any more because after the third one because everyone already knows what happens after we went through all the stuff we went through. Everyone already knows about the killing, the shooting. Everybody knows what happens already, but I read through some things that may be a good treat and would shed some light on, besides the shooting and the killing of Selena, what other things happened right before the shooting took place and right after the shooting took place. So I'm gonna pick up at the very top of this page here, and we're gonna dig right in, okay? Now, what I really would like to do is just read this through. Now, if I stop and do an elaboration, fine, but this is just more so for y'all to get more pieces and meat from picking up where we left off from the last video. I believe it's the third video, and I believe this one is going to be the fourth. Don't quote me on it. I haven't had time to go back and look and see if this is the fourth video or if this is the fifth. If I'm not mistaken, I think I did 3 videos total, so this video should be video number 4. But let's dig right in. Okay, it was a nice night. I turned off the ignition and rolled down the windows. I listened to the radio, but when Selena didn't come back after a while, I decided I'd better go see what was going on. I locked the truck and followed the path that Selena had taken. The door to Yolanda's room was open and light was spilling out of the doorway. I looked inside and saw Yolanda was sitting on the bed. She looked like she had been crying. Selena was standing in front of her, looking upset as well. "Hey," I said, "everything okay in here?" "Yeah, everything is cool," Selena said. Neither of us knew that Yolanda had returned to the same gun shop in San Antonio a few days before this, where she repurchased the exact snub-nosed Taurus 45 revolver that she had bought before. I didn't see the gun. All I saw was a small, sad, ugly little woman sitting on the bed. Not a murderer. Okay, so I will stop here. So basically, Chris was saying that Yolanda was not attractive, okay? She was not attractive. So she was not the typical type of woman that men wanted. You know what I mean? So I'm sure Yolanda had low self-esteem issues. Yolanda didn't feel good about herself. Yolanda had a lot of core problems and issues underneath this onion, okay? If you peel back the onion, you'll begin to see the deep core issues that resided in Yolanda at that time. And I'm probably sure that whatever problems she had 25, 26 years ago, I'm pretty sure those problems are still there while she's in prison. And then the fact that Yolanda went back and bought the gun back. She bought the gun previously and then she went and returned it. And then she went and repurchased that same gun again. Because I guess she had changed her mind and decided to go get the gun again because people were pissing her off, especially Abraham. So she changed her mind and went back and got the gun back. And Chris was also basically saying that she did not look like the type to be a murderer. And I'm pretty sure the rest of the Quintanilla family felt the same way. Bottom line is Yolanda had these people fooled, okay? Looks can be deceiving. You cannot judge a book by its cover, and you cannot put nothing past people. Looks are not enough to tell you about a person. You have to know enough about them to find out the truth about who they really are. But looks cannot tell you anything about a person. You could be pretty and still be a killer. You can be ugly and still be innocent, and vice versa. You can be ugly and be a killer, and you can be pretty and be innocent. All right, let's keep going. Who knows? Maybe Yolanda would have killed Selena that night if I hadn't gone along. In any case, Selena followed me back out to the truck and told me that Yolanda had been telling her about being raped in Monterey earlier that day. What? I turned around in shock. Yeah, she was trying to show me her torn clothes, Selena said. I offered to take her to the hospital, but she wouldn't go. Probably because it's another one of her stories. It looks to me like Yolanda did that to herself. So right here, what we just read, Selena basically is catching on to the fact that Yolanda is a liar and a bullshitter. Whereas prior, Selena wasn't picking up on this. Selena was not believing this about Yolanda. But now Selena is catching on to what the hell is really going on now. Now she's getting it now, okay? We got into the truck and I started the engine. Selena turned on the overhead light and started flipping through the papers. It's not all here, she said in frustration. There are more papers missing, Chris. Let me go in and see Yolanda again. I was already pulling the truck out of the motel parking lot. No, let's just go, I said. You know what's going to happen if you go back there. Yolanda's just going to make some excuse about why she can't give you anything else. Selena sighed and leaned her head back. Yeah, you're right. So basically, Selena is flipping through papers and she realizes that, okay, this is not all that she was supposed to give me. I want the rest of my shit. Let me go back and try to go get it. Chris is like, nah, it's getting late. All she's going to do is put you through more BS. It's not even worth our time. Let's just go home. And then he realizes, too, that when he thinks back on it and reminisces, Selena probably would have been killed that night by Yolanda if Chris had not have gone up there with her. So he actually saved Selena's life the night before. And if he had gone with her, if he had got up early in the morning with her and gone with her, like after he heard her scream from being startled by his father, if Chris had just gotten up and gone with her, even though Selena probably didn't want him to go, if he'd have just put his foot down and got up and gone with her and asked questions and say, where you're going, let me go with you. If he'd have just done that, he probably would have saved her life that day too. Think about it. But, he didn't know. The Quintanillas, they didn't know. You know what I mean? They didn't know. And at the end of the day, you can't beat yourself up about what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and that's just what it is. It's unfortunate, but they didn't think anything of it, and they didn't think Yolanda was capable of doing something like that. All right, let's read on. By the time we got back to our house, my dad had already arrived from San Antonio. We hung out for a while and made plans for the next day. Selena made a list of things for me to buy at the grocery store. She was planning to make my favorite meal, black-tipped shark. I've never had shark before, but I'm pretty sure for those who are really into eating seafood, I'm pretty sure it's probably pretty good. Eventually, my dad went to the guest room to unpack. When he came back to the kitchen, Selena and I were paying bills. We both had our checkbooks out on the kitchen table. Seeing that made my dad laugh and get his camera. Okay, so right here, reading this little section tells me that photo I saw of Selena and Chris looked like they were signing checks and filling out paperwork. That photo was a photo taken by Chris's father. So now I know who snapped that shot. Now I know who took that photo. It was Chris's dad. Okay, let's keep reading. Here, he said, aiming the camera in our direction. I wanted to get pictures of you two paying bills like grown-ups and being so responsible. That was the very last picture ever taken of Selena alive. Imagine that, you guys. The very last picture ever taken of Selena alive. And I'm pretty sure Chris is holding that dearest to his heart. He's probably, taking that memory and just holding on to it. You know what I mean? And he said prior that he didn't want to share moments like that because it was private. And also he just wanted to have something to himself. He didn't want to have something to share with the fans. He just wanted to keep something for himself. And I don't blame him. It's totally understandable. I would want to have something to keep to myself too if I lost a loved one. So that feeling of wanting to be selfish and have only something for himself, I totally get that. Let's keep reading. If I had to pick my happiest memory with Selena, I'd probably pick the night before she was killed. Things were so good with us at that moment, as we always did when Selena and I went to bed together. We hugged and said how much we loved each other. That night, she lay with her head on that sweet spot on my shoulder, and we talked about the future. It was one of those moments when you're in love with somebody and you feel that love coming back to you. I'm happy to have that memory of our last night together as a reminder of how rich and full of love our lives were despite everything. That's beautiful, guys. Like, to be quite honest, and I don't want to get off topic here, and this is in no way about me, but I want to share a little tidbit is that he just said right there how much love Selena had for him and how much love he had for Selena and how they shared that love jointly with one another. And they were deep in love, y'all. Like they were deep in love. And I'm 37 years old. I've been married for 15 years now, going on 16. And I still haven't felt that. And it's sad. It's sad that I have not felt that same experience. And I've been married for 15 years and I'm 37 years old. And I still have not experienced that yet. Let's keep going. Oh, and before I move on, not everyone finds their true love in this world, and that's unfortunate. Not everyone is fortunate enough to find their true love, their soulmate, what have you. Very, very few people find that in life. The phone rang as we were lying there, and Selena looked at me. What? I said. It's Yolanda. How do you know? I asked. Selena rolled over and picked up the phone. After she'd said hello, Selena listened for a minute, then said to me, guess what? Yolanda found those missing papers. She wants me to come back to the motel and get them. She wants me to go alone. Hang right here. So Selena says that Yolanda tells her that she wants her to go alone. That shit is like goosebumps, hair standing up on my head, arms. That shit is some creepy shit. Hang on just a moment. Hang tight. Hey, y'all, I'm back. I did not want to embarrass myself and be wiping my nose in front of the camera like that. I have really bad allergies, so I had to just take care of that. Sorry about that, guys. So, yeah. So Yolanda says to Selena she wants her to come alone. Now, what do you guys think about that? Like, that shit is some creepy ass shit. And that should have been one red flag for Selena, is the fact that Yolanda asked her to come alone. Selena was so naive. Selena was so trusting of this woman. Selena didn't think much of it. She didn't think nothing of it. There was a lot of things that Selena put past Yolanda and she shouldn't have. And that's what led to her demise, unfortunately. There was a lot of telltale signs that pointed to Selena, to Chris, and to the quinceañeras that Yolanda could not be trusted. Yolanda is dangerous, but they ignored those telltale signs. They ignored those red flags, not on purpose. I don't think they ignored them on purpose. I just think they didn't know any better. And like Chris said in the next page over previous, he said that she did not look like a murderer. So you got to think how these people were thinking at the time. In the early 90s, people didn't think the way that people think now. People were not as smart as people are in today's time and in today's world. Yeah, this story is just really sad. It's disappointing. It's heartbreaking. But this story also teaches valuable lessons about trust, about people, and about your surroundings and how to protect yourself. Let's keep going. No, I said. Tell her that you're not going back. It's too late. No way. Okay, so even that night, even the night before, Chris was basically trying to stop his wife from getting into some shit that she had no business getting herself into. He even tried to stop Selena in her tracks the night before. So Chris probably felt like, you know, this shit ain't right. It's something not right about this situation, and it's something not right about this woman. But he probably just couldn't put a finger on it. You know what I mean? Let's keep going. Yolanda then started talking about the rape. Selena stopped her and said, if you want to go to the hospital, I'll take you. I already told you that. When Yolanda said no, that she didn't want to go to the hospital, Selena said, you know what? It's late, and this conversation is over. Then she hung up the phone. She probably thought I would be with you, and that's why she said no, I said. Yeah, and she probably also knows that if I take her to the hospital, they won't find anything wrong, Selena said. Maybe I should go over there anyway. Don't. Just stay here with me, I said. We'll handle everything tomorrow, okay? Now, see this line right here? It points back to what I just said about Chris needing to get up in the morning to go with her. He should have got up the next morning and went with her, and he should have got up asking her questions. And he just said in this line that he told Selena that they'll handle everything tomorrow. So he should have got up and he should have went with her. He should have got up and started asking her questions. But hey, he was tired. He didn't think much of it. He didn't know. You know what I mean? Let's keep going. Okay, Selena agreed, and we both fell asleep at last. In the morning, I woke up to the sound of Selena shuffling things around in the bedroom. I opened one eye and watched her getting her clothes together. I didn't know where she was going, but I was too sleepy to wonder about it. I didn't even think about the motel or Yolanda. Selena showered and dressed, then opened the door of our bedroom to leave. As she did, my dad opened the door to the guest room at the same time. Selena had completely forgotten that he was in the house. Now, what they're talking about is Chris's dad. She screamed at the sight of him in really loud, scared kind of scream. I jumped out of bed. What? What's going on? I shouted. Selena turned around and started laughing that great big laugh of hers. It's nothing. Go back to bed, Chris. I'm sorry. I forgot your dad was here. He really scared me. At the same time, I could see my dad in the hallway apologizing. I didn't mean to scare you, he said to Selena. But truthfully, he also looked pretty startled. My dad and Selena talked for a few minutes in the hallway. I turned over and went back to sleep. I didn't even think to ask Selena why she was getting up so early. She often woke up before I did, got dressed and chilled around the house, made phone calls, or went off to have breakfast with her dad. The only unusual thing about that morning was that I had been awakened by Selena screaming. Selena, it turned out, was on her way to the day's end. She had talked to Yolanda again that morning, and she was determined to take Yolanda to the hospital and have her examined after the so-called rape. That was Selena's style. She was going to see this thing through and prove that Yolanda was lying. So like I said, Selena was starting to catch on. You know what I'm saying? She was starting to catch on to the fact that Yolanda's a liar and that Yolanda was bullshitting. Okay, let's keep reading. Selena called me a little later that morning to tell me that she had taken Yolanda to the doctor's regional hospital. Now they were returning to the day's inn. I couldn't find my keys, Selena confessed, so I took your truck and your cell phone. Yolanda was in the truck with her, so Selena lowered her voice as she told me that the doctors had found no evidence of rape. There was nothing else Yolanda had now that could keep Selena there. They were on their way back to the motel, and Selena would come home, I thought. Maybe we would finally be rid of that woman and her craziness. I went with my dad in his car to pick up the groceries we needed for dinner and to run a few errands. The sky was cloudy and gray, and the day had a gloomy feel to it. Something made me decide to call off the other errands after we'd bought the groceries. You know what? I said to my dad. Let's just go back to the house. I can go out again later. We left the seafood place where we'd bought the shark and drove home. When I saw that the answering machine light was blinking, I pushed play. Listened to a cryptic message from one of our DJ friends in the valley. Hey, Chris, he said, is everything okay? Call me back. Why hadn't he called me on my cell phone? I wondered. Then I remembered that Selena had my phone in the truck with her. Nobody could reach me. There was another message as well, this one from someone who had heard a rumor that Selena had been hurt or in an accident. I just rolled my eyes. Selena and I often got these kinds of crazy calls because the media in Corpus was always looking for another story they could do about her. I was in the bedroom and my dad was in the living room watching TV when the phone rang. I let the answer machine pick up the call. I never answered the phone right away. This time, however, I heard Selena's aunt, Dolores, speaking and picked up the phone receiver immediately. What's up? I said. Dolores sounded calm, fairly collected, but her voice was a little higher pitched than usual. Tight sounding. Selena's been involved in an accident, Chris, she said, her voice starting to shake a little. She's at Memorial Hospital. You need to get over there as soon as you can. Immediately, I thought of how fast Selena liked to drive. It must have been a car accident, I thought. What happened? I asked, my heart starting to pound. Selena was shot twice, Aunt Dolores said. You need to come to the hospital right away. I hung up the phone, ran into the living room, and told my dad about the call. I was upset, but still not panicked. People get shot and survive their wounds all the time, I thought to myself. By now, we were in the car. Aloud, I said to my dad, damn it, man, why did she have to go to that motel by herself this morning? Now look what has happened. So right then, Chris knew that shit, okay, something happened. And had she not have gone to that hotel by herself, she probably would have been all right. Let's keep reading. My dad had been going the speed limit. He began driving faster and faster the closer we got to the Memorial Hospital. By the time he pulled into the hospital parking lot, he was driving so fast that the tires screeched as he went around last corner. In my mind, of course, Selena was still alive. I was going into that hospital and see her and hold her in my arms. The thought never entered my mind that my wife might not make it, much less that Selena might pass away before I could even see her again. Robert, one of our sound guys on the road, was already there. I saw him standing outside the main door smoking a cigarette, but he didn't say anything to me. My dad and I walked into the emergency room, and right away a bunch of doctors, nurses surrounded me. Somebody put a hand on my shoulder and said, "This way, son." I was led into a waiting room. Everyone was already there. Abraham, Marcella, Suzette, and many other family members. Only AB was missing. He had already slipped away to grieve on his own. When I saw them, I kind of gave everybody a smile, even though my stomach started twisting into knots at the sight of their expressions. "What's going on?" I said. "Where's Selena?" Abraham looked at me with dull eyes and said, "Selena passed away, Chris. She's dead. She was shot and she's dead." For a moment, I stood there feeling stunned, absolutely numb from shock. How was it possible that I was ever going to see my wife alive again, never to kiss her or feel her arms around me? Then I started sobbing, knowing that Selena was gone, but not really grasping it. It was like it takes a while to believe that somebody is gone. You understand it, but you don't really believe it. Abraham was crying too. Now, we didn't know all of the details of the shooting. Those came out much later. Then everybody else started weeping with us, and I suddenly had to get out of that room, escape that wall of grief. Selena's uncle Isaac, Abraham's younger brother, was sitting in the crowded waiting room too. He must have seen how I was, for he opened the door and walked with me out into the hospital hallway. 2 doctors were standing there. One of them said to me, "We're sorry for your loss. We did everything we could." I couldn't speak. Then the doctors said, "We need you to come and identify the body." "What?" I said, disbelieving still that any of this was happening. "What do you mean? What do I have to do?" Isaac said, "What are you talking about? Selena's dead. Why does he have to look at her body?" "Somebody needs to come and identify her," one of the doctors said gently. "It's standard procedure." "I can't do that," I gasped. I felt like I might pass out from grief. I could scarcely breathe. All I could think about was how Selena had looked when she turned around and laughed this morning in the bedroom and told me to go back to sleep. Selena was gone. How could she be gone? "I'm sorry, but you have to come with us and identify her," the doctor was repeating. I had been barely holding myself together. Now I went completely out of control, yelling at the doctors. "I can't do that right now, all right?" I shouted. "I told you that already. I just can't do it. I just can't." Isaac stopped between me and the doctors and said, "What about me? Can I do it for him?" "Are you a family member?" the doctor said. "I'm her uncle," he said. The doctors led him away, leaving me standing there alone in the hallway, weeping. So just imagine, you guys, how Chris must have felt, how the uncle felt, how Chris's father felt, how Selena's family members felt. This was like a moment of reckoning for the whole entire family, including Chris. And you got to think about how people process grief. It's a really shitty feeling. And the reason why I can sit here and say that it's a really shitty feeling is because I went through this myself. I lost my mother when I was 10 years old. I lost my mother when I was still a child, practically a baby fresh out of diapers. Like, it's the most devastating feeling that anyone could ever have, ever experience, ever go through. So for anyone on here who's watching this video and can connect to what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. You understand how Chris felt at that moment, how Selena's family members felt at that moment, how I felt when I found out about the loss of my mother. And then you got to think, like, when I found out about my mother's passing, I had to find out at a therapy appointment. It wasn't no private moment between me and my family. It was a fucking therapy appointment. I had to go to therapy to find out that my mother was dead. So just imagine how Chris feels, how this is just thrown at him like a ton of bricks just out of nowhere. It's a shitty feeling, y'all. It's a shitty feeling. Let's keep going. My dad drove me home from the hospital. I didn't know what time we left or in what order anything happened. I was there, but not there. It was like a nightmare. I walked around the rooms and saw Selena's clothes on the bed and our paperwork still on the kitchen table from the night before. I walked into the bathroom and there was Selena's robe still draped over the shower rod from this morning. It occurred to me then that, of course, Selena hadn't known it would be her last day on this earth either. I started to cry. My family gathered at the house. Certain details were starting to emerge about the shooting and were slowly filtering into my numbed consciousness. I knew that Selena had gone to the Days Inn to meet Yolanda that morning. I had taken her to the hotel and called me when they were on their way back to Yolanda's room. There had apparently been some kind of confrontation in the motel room, probably about the missing financial records, just before noon. When Selena told Yolanda that she couldn't trust her anymore, Yolanda had drawn the gun from her purse. As Selena turned to leave the room, Yolanda fired once in my wife's back, severing an artery to the heart. And that right there tells me that Yolanda knew what the hell she was doing. It wasn't no accident. Yolanda did exactly what she had planned to do. She carried out her plan. So for her to say, oh, it was an accident, I didn't mean to do it, bitch, you lying. You know, YouTube, don't remove this video, but we all know she was lying. It wasn't no accident. She knew what she was doing. She did exactly what she was planning on doing because she went back and bought the gun. So all this, we can dismiss all that BS about how it was an accident. We all know better than that, right? Yeah, we know better than that. Let's keep reading. Selena had managed to run across the parking lot toward the lobby, leaving a trail of blood calling her for help. She had collapsed on the lobby floor, soaked in blood, and begged the clerks to lock the door. She identified Yolanda as the shooter to one of the clerks, who then dialed an ambulance. The paramedics tried to stop Selena's internal bleeding and performed CPR. Selena was still alive when they arrived at Memorial Hospital. She had apparently taken off the ring that Yolanda had given her because when one of the paramedics tried to find a vein for the IV, Selena had opened and the ring fell out. So that was the scene in the movie where we saw Selena's hand open and she drops the ring onto the ground. So that very scene in the movie right there is what Chris is talking about happened here. In the hospital's trauma room, the doctors and surgeons had tried blood transfusions after opening up her chest and discovering massive internal bleeding. Selena died just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was 2 days before our third wedding anniversary. So just imagine losing your spouse just 2 days before you guys' anniversary. It's really sad. It's heartbreaking. Like him and his wife was just about to make it to their third year, but she ends up passing away before that even happens. Poor Chris. Like, I'm sure Chris probably dealt with a lot of grief, more, and I'm gonna say more so than the family members, because at least the family members had significant others to go home to. Chris didn't. Let's keep reading. After shooting Selena, Yolanda had run to the truck and tried to flee the hotel parking lot, but the police had seen her trying to escape. Now, as our family gathered in the living room of our house, Yolanda was parked in her truck with the same pistol aimed at her right temple. She was threatening to kill herself. I couldn't stay in the living room watching the standoff as the police tried to negotiate and stop her from pulling the trigger. I didn't think that Yolanda would shoot herself, but I didn't really care what she did. It was as if I had been swallowed by a black cloud and couldn't see beyond my own grief. I went into our bedroom to lie down. After a little while, I got up again and collected the clothes that Selena had been wearing the night before. She had left them on the floor beside the bed. My family was still watching the standoff with Yolanda on TV. In total, she would stay at the pickup truck outside the Days Inn for over 9 hours before finally letting the police take her into custody. Back in the bedroom, I sat on Selena's side of the bed and held her clothes. I could smell her perfume on them, and suddenly, what I wanted more than anything else was to save that smell forever. I returned to the kitchen and put Selena's clothes in a plastic bag so that I could seal in the smell. I had to walk by the living room. Everyone looked up at me from the television where they were watching the standoff between the police and Yolanda. I didn't know why you all are watching that, I told them. She's not going to kill herself. Yolanda kept saying that she was sorry for shooting Selena, but I didn't believe it. I was sure that she only wished that she had the nerve to pull the trigger, but she knew that she didn't, the same way that I knew it. This was all an act to show that she was feeling remorse. She wasn't. Yolanda was just sorry that she was caught. I went back into the bedroom with Selena's clothes and held that bag in my arms, rocking a little on the edge of the bed. For the longest time, I kept that bag of Selena's clothes. I would poke a hole in it and then squeeze the bag so that I could smell her perfume. Then I'd seal up the hole again as quickly as I could. I knew that only I had a certain number of times that I could do that before there would be nothing left of Selena. That's so sad. It's so sad, guys. That's so sad. So sad for Chris. The night before Selena's funeral, we held a viewing for family and close friends at the funeral home. I hadn't yet seen Selena's body. I sat in front of the row, maybe 10 feet away from the casket, unable to look at anywhere but a spot on the floor, maybe a foot in front of my feet. I sat there with her family, just staring at the spot, feeling Selena close but not able to look at her, much less approach the casket. I was paralyzed by grief. "Come on, Chris," everyone urged me. "You need to say goodbye." "Man, I don't want to do that," I told them. "I can't see her like this." Everything felt surreal, and the whole business at the funeral home, which was packed with people, with many more lined up outside all night to get inside, I felt like a spectacle to me. It felt like a spectacle to me. I hadn't had any time alone with Selena. I was clutching the ring I had bought for Selena to celebrate our second wedding anniversary. The ring I had hidden in her pillowcase in Jamaica. I had it on one of my fingers, and I kept twiddling it around in my hand. Selena's family, meanwhile, did a wonderful job of talking to the people who came to pay their respects. When the viewing hours were over, her uncle Isaac came over to me and said, "Chris, you hadn't gone up to see her. Why not?" I was crying. "I can't," I said. "I can't go up there and see her." "Come on," he said gently. And then Isaac literally picked me up off the chair by hooking an arm around my shoulders. I didn't rest. As we walked to the casket, though, my legs started shaking so badly that I nearly collapsed. I hadn't eaten anything in 2 days, and my clothes were already falling off my body. So just imagine this moment, guys. Abraham's younger brother was the only one that seemed to be giving Chris the support and love that Chris needed at that time. There is nothing written here about Abraham reaching out to Chris, about Selena's mother, about Selena's siblings. The only person who reached out to Chris and gave Chris the emotional and moral support that he needed was Abraham's brother. I'm not throwing no shade at the Quintanilla family. I'm not throwing no shade at Mr. Quintanilla. But what I am saying is, did nobody from the Quintanilla family, with the exception of Abraham's brother, did none of them console Chris? It's not written anywhere in the book, any pages, any paragraphs that any of the siblings or Selena's parents, none of them consoled Chris. None of them helped Chris. None of them was really there for Chris. You know what I mean? And that's my personal opinion. This is what I'm gathering based on what I'm reading. And this is what I'm getting out of the reading, like in a subliminal way. Abraham, we all know Abraham never liked Chris. We all know Abraham hates Chris. We all know Abraham couldn't stand Chris. So it makes total sense why Chris never got any moral or emotional support from Abraham. But Abraham's brother was respectable enough and kind enough and decent enough to go do that for Chris. Let's keep reading. And then, you know, we all know while Chris is going through his grieving, he didn't eat any food. He was losing weight. And see, this is the same experience I had when I lost my mother. I wasn't eating, you guys. I was losing weight. My clothes was fitting big on me, just like what Chris explained here. The same kind of thing. I went through that same thing when I lost my mom. So I know exactly what Chris was going through at that moment, at that time. Let's keep reading. You know what? Isaac said. Stop right here for a minute. I'm going to get everybody out of the room. It's going to be just you and her, son. I halted next to him. I couldn't have gone anywhere without his support anyway. Just as he'd promised, Isaac announced, everybody please, we need privacy here. Everybody out, please. We need privacy here. He led me up to the casket once the room was cleared and left me there. Once everybody else was gone, I felt okay. The show was over. It's just you and me now, I whispered to my wife. I stood there crying and looking at her for a minute. Then I gave Selena a kiss on the forehead and stroked her hand. She looked so comfortable and peaceful lying there in the coffin that I just wanted to get in there with her and lie down beside her, put my arm around her, close the top and say, let's go. After a few minutes, though, I got the ring out of my pocket and put it on Selena's wedding ring finger. Then I got down on my knees right there and said a prayer, the tears still streaming down my face, and said my last goodbye. So just imagine the person that you love, the person that is it's like the other half of your humanness, you know what I mean, is gone. And you having to say your last goodbye to them. Imagine that, guys. Let's read. The next day, we held Selena's funeral at Seaside Memorial Park in Corpus Christi. My friend Rudy drove me there in his car. I don't remember much of that day other than the thick gray clouds gathered overhead and being aware of wearing my wedding ring. I was in too much of a daze to notice much beyond my small circle of pain. I stayed on in our house in Corpus for a while. I wanted to surround myself with Selena's family, with her belongings and our dogs, with anything that could help me keep Selena close. So there was another part that I didn't stop at right away, but I wanted to comment on is the fact that Chris's friend drove him to the funeral. Not Selena's brother, not Selena's sister, not Selena's father, not Selena's mother, but Chris's friend drove him to the funeral. So I'm getting the sense that they wasn't supportive of Chris. Chris lost somebody just like they did. They lost the same person. They was not loving toward him. They wasn't consoling him. They wasn't helping him. And this is what I'm getting out of the reading now. I don't know what really happened outside of this writing in this book, but that's the feeling that I'm getting out of what he wrote. He didn't mention anything about what the Quintanillas did to help console him, to help support him. Didn't nobody drive him to the funeral? Didn't nobody pick him up? Why did his friend have to drive him to the funeral? How come they couldn't pick him up themselves? Or how come they couldn't get a limo to get him and they all go to the funeral together? How come they left Chris out? I didn't like that. I don't like that right there. And I'm sure Chris was probably subliminally trying to tell us this. Like, if y'all just read between the lines, y'all can kind of understand what was going on. Let's keep reading. Selena and I had a king-size bed. It was so big that sometimes I'd wake up and joke around when I saw her on the other side of the mattress, waving at her like we were standing across a river from each other. Selena would wave back. Now when I wake up, I was alone on one side of the river. She had crossed it, but I couldn't see her. I shut myself off from everything. I didn't want to go anywhere, do anything, or see anybody. Hell yeah, like, I get that. I didn't want to go nowhere. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to see nobody either when I lost my mama. I just tried to be. There were periods when I slept a lot and other times when I stayed up for 3 days straight. I started to drink heavily. Okay, so this is the rumors that I've been hearing about Chris, started drinking after the loss of Selena. And here's evidence of it in his book right here. He just said it. He said he started drinking heavily. I'm not condoning nobody to get drunk. I'm not condoning nobody to be an alcoholic. But what I am saying is, I completely understand. I get it. Like, what else can you do to numb your pain other than to drink? You know what I mean? That's why people turn to drinking and drugs when they're in that much pain. Let's keep reading. The months crawled by. People kept trying to pull me out of my well of grief. Nothing worked. I slept with pictures of Selena, snapshots of her doing ordinary everything. I slept with snapshots of Selena doing her ordinary everyday things, like dusting or playing with the dogs, because that's how I saw her. I even carried stacks of photos around with me so that I'd have her with me everywhere I went. I'd go to a friend's house maybe and be surrounded by well-meaning people, but I'd still be that weird guy sitting alone off in a corner with my pictures of Selena. So just imagine that. He's dealing with his grief. He's coming to grips with the fact that he lost her. He doesn't want to be around nobody. He don't want to make no new memories. He doesn't really care. He's just drowned in this state of grief. So just imagine being in that state of mind and feeling like no one cares, no one loves you, no one can help, no one understands. I'm going to reread the last line. I'd go to a friend's house maybe and be surrounded by well-meaning people, but I'd still be that weird guy sitting alone off in a corner with my pictures of Selena. I ached for her every day. Occasionally, Abraham would insist that I come over to Q Productions. He, AB, and Suzette all went back to work, coping with the murder of their beloved daughter and sister in their own ways. They were trying to keep Selena's memory alive and hoping to bring me along with them into a future where I no longer felt like I had a place. Okay, so in this part right here, he does say that they were a little supportive. They made him feel like he was on that ride and that journey with them. And that's cool of them. Like, I think that they should have done that. But I just think they could have done a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that the Quintanillas were not supportive of Chris at all, but what I am saying is that they could have done a little bit more to make him feel like he was a part of the grieving process as well. Because the things that he explained during the day of the funeral, I just didn't like how that sounded. It just sounded like to me that the Quintanillas were cold toward him. You know what I mean? Like, that's the vibe that I got. But after Selena's passing and the family tried to, basically move on and figure out life without Selena, I think that they did reach out to Chris and tried to get him involved and included, and I think that was cool. Why would I want to live in a world without Selena? Whenever I did make that rare appearance at the Q Productions, I would walk in and hear a gasp from Selena's aunt Dolores, who worked at the front desk. Dolores scarcely recognized me anymore. I was so thin that my pants didn't fit and my shirts were just barely hanging on my body. People kept trying to make me eat lunch or dinner with them, but I'd always say that I wasn't hungry. That was the truth, too. My mother visited regularly. She was trying to help me rejoin the living any way she could, talking to me, cooking, cleaning the house. One day, she was scrubbing out the bathroom when I heard something crash to the floor. I snapped out of my stupor and ran to her. "Mom, you okay?" She was standing in front of the bathroom with a hand over her mouth, staring at a pill bottle on the floor. It was a bottle of folic acid tablets. Now, when they say folic acid tablets, I know exactly why Chris's mother felt startled and felt like, oh my God, because folic acid tablets, as we all know, is something that pregnant women take. And you guys get what's about to happen in this next line is he's basically about to say that his mother thought that Selena was pregnant. And his mother thought that he lost his wife and his baby. But that wasn't the case. But yeah, we can all guess what his mother was thinking. Let's keep reading. Pills that women take during pregnancy. My mother looked at me, a question in her eyes. "I know what you're thinking, but no, Mom," I said gently. Selena wasn't pregnant. She took these pills for a while because she'd heard that folic acid is good for your hair. The truth was that Selena and I had been talking about having children just before she died. Once the mainstream album was released, once we had promoted it and played some shows, we had decided it was time to move forward with our own family. If Selena had lived, would she have become the next Gloria Estefan, conquering the pop charts? I thought so, but in a way, it didn't matter. Selena and I already had each other. We were ready to build our dream house on the 10 beautiful acres of land in Corpus Christi and get started on the next chapter of our lives. Now I was thankful that at least Selena wasn't pregnant and that I hadn't lost my child as well as my wife. After about 6 months, Selena's death no longer felt like that constant, piercing pain. Instead, I had an empty, hollow, sad feeling that I imagined would never go away, punctured by silent howls of despair when something reminded me on a deeper level that Selena was really gone. Like when I picked up the phone to call her and realized how much I missed hearing her voice. I tried to dull my emotions with drugs and alcohol, slipping further out of the life that seems so pointless now. So just imagine this moment, he's saying he was in so much pain that he had to do drugs and alcohol to numb the pain. He was going through the motions. He was finding a way to cope and deal. You know what I mean? Occasionally, though, I began to have some moments when I'd force my grief into a corner and tried to start over. She wouldn't want you to do this, I reminded myself. You have to keep on living for her. When I could, I wrote a little music and lost myself in my guitar. Somehow this was possible. I could express my grief through music when words just wouldn't do it. Around this time, I met a charismatic, talented singer named John Garza, who became my friend and, in a way, and in many ways, my protector during my darkest times. John moved into my house and made sure that I made it home in one piece each night, no matter what I did to escape the body that trapped my soul inside it, preventing me from joining Selena. John and I started working on music together, just a little bit here and there. I admired John's voice because whenever he sang, it seemed as if he could convey the rush of feelings behind the words I was writing. John didn't know me before Selena passed. He saw the crazy lifestyle that I was leading, but to his credit, he never judged me or made me feel bad about the things I was doing to myself. He understood what I was going through and simply watched my back as I struggled to find some meaning in my life again, even though I was looking for that meaning in all the wrong places. Once John and I found ourselves in a hotel in San Antonio. I was preoccupied with some football game that was about to start. We didn't have any alcohol, so I said, "Dude, I'm going to run out and get some beer real quick." We took off from the hotel. I was in a hurry because I didn't want to miss the kickoff. I started jogging across the parking lot, John maintaining a steady pace beside me. All of a sudden, I realized that my mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out. I knew that I was talking, yet I couldn't hear anything but this incredibly noisy wind in my ears, or maybe it was inside my head. I stopped running and froze in place. John stopped beside me. "What's wrong?" he asked. "My heart stopped," I said. John put his hand on my chest. "There was nothing," he said. No sound. Then suddenly, boom, boom, my heart started beating again, and my hearing returned. I went right over to the liquor store and bought some beer. That's the state of mind I was in. All right, so that was all I highlighted. I did not read the entire chapter. I did not read the entire last two chapters. I just only highlighted the important parts because I just wanted you guys to get an understanding of Chris's grief, what he was going through, what he felt, how the family processed everything, how everything went down the day before, the night before, all of those things. I did not read anything about Selena's touring. I did not read anything about the pop charts and all that because we already know about all that. I just skipped all the, the boring stuff, and I just highlighted and read the important, juicy parts. So the harsh truths of the Selena story. Selena trusted somebody that she shouldn't have. Selena put many things past a person that she shouldn't have. The Quintanillas trusted a person that they should not have trusted. They let someone into their circle that they should not have. They were just a loving, caring, kind family. Selena was a loving, caring, kind person. They needed help. You know what I mean? Because they were on a road. They were busy. Selena wanted to start another business outside of the band and outside of singing, but Selena needed help. Selena trusted Yolanda. Yolanda seemed like the perfect candidate for the job. Abraham just wanted to make sure his daughter was not burnt out and made sure that she had help. So did the rest of the family and her siblings. So did Chris. Everybody wanted to make sure that Selena was happy and had help. I'm not sure if Abraham himself was really concerned about Selena's happiness because all he seemed to be concerned about was Selena's singing career and the money that he was going to be getting from that. But he did not care about Selena starting the fashion business that she wanted to start. He did not really care about Selena's dreams as a fashion designer. He only was concerned about Selena's singing career. Selena's fashion design business was what would have made her happy. It's what would have made her feel like she accomplished her goals. But it was not singing in the band. Singing in the band was her father's dream. Her dream was fashion design. Martin Gomez can confirm that. Chris himself can confirm it, and Selena's mother can confirm it. Selena was on the road a lot. Selena very seldomly had any time to be a child, very seldomly had any time to enjoy her childhood, very seldomly had any time to enjoy her childhood crushes and just be a kid. The majority of her life was spent on the road. And I just kind of stopped and put myself in her shoes. What type of life was she living? And I did some driving from Austin to Houston, and those 3.5 hours of driving, I just put myself in Selena's shoes and in her siblings' shoes and just thought about how they must felt. Life on the road is tough. It's not easy. It's a lot of bird baths, a lot of unhealthy eating, a lot of hours of being cold or being hot. Life on the road is tough. Life on the road is not easy. Life on the road is it's nothing like the life you would live if you were just living at home in a regular house and living a normal, regular life. You're living your life out of a suitcase. You're jumping from city to city. All those things. You got to think about the reality of life and what it's like on the road. Life on the road is nothing like life anywhere else. So the majority of her time was spent on the road, but then her life gets cut short by a crazed maniac. So Selena lived a really shitty life. That's the harsh truth and conclusion that I'm coming to is when you live life on the road, which is shitty already in itself, and then you run into a situation that cuts your life short, that's shitty in itself. You didn't really get to live your life to its fullest. You did not get to live the fullness of a life. But the accomplishments that Selena made, that was the fullness of a life. She accomplished way more in her short 23 years than I will probably ever accomplish in my life, and I'm 37 years old. So that's an accomplishment in itself. But when I think about the reality and the sincerity of it all, if I had to live my life driving from city to city to entertain people, to make them happy, and sing and dance for them, to make their day great for what? Temporarily for a few hours, and I had to take bird baths and do a bunch of unhealthy eating and sleeping in hotels and dealing with, the seasonal changes on Big Bertha. And because you got to think, on that bus, it was probably hella fucking cold during the winter. It was probably hella hot during the summer. Just think about that, y'all. Life on the road, like some real shit. It was not glitzy and glamorous. It was not like easy. It was hard. That shit was hard fucking work. And then you got your father in your ear telling you stuff over here, how he wants you to be, how he wants you to act, how he wants you to do this, that, and the third. You got all this pressure on you about your image and how you should do things. But then on the other side of the coin, you got all this creativity just brewing in your mind. You want to do the best. You want to be the best. You want to create your clothes. You want to figure out a way for your fashion dream to shine through your singing, through your band, through your traveling. But you got your father and family members over here not being supportive of that. So you find these slick, sly ways to get that part of your dream and that part of your desire to shine. Like, just imagine you really want to be a fashion designer. You really want to make it in the fashion world, but your father's main focus is singing in the band, right? But you go in your mind, you're like, okay, well, pops want me to do the singing and the dancing over here. I don't mind doing it. I'm great at it. I'm talented at it, but I really want my design work to shine. So I'm a use the singing and the dancing and the performing in the band as a way to get my designs out there, to show it off, to get it to have some exposure. She did that. She was creative. She was very determined and very ambitious. Like, I probably wouldn't have thought of that. I probably wouldn't have thought to say, hey, I can use the singing and the band as a tool to get my fashions out there. She did that, you know? So there was a lot of perseverance, a lot of hard work, a lot of hard days, a lot of long days on the road, a lot of hungry days, cold days, hot days, a lot of practicing, a lot of preparing, a lot of lectures from her father, a lot of sad days. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of days she was probably depressed. But she took all of that fucked up shit that she had to go through living on the road, that fucked up life on the road, and she flipped that and made it into a positive. And she used that as a way to help her design career to become something. So that was smart on her part. She was strong. She was mentally strong and tough. She was creative. She was talented. She was very enduring. She persevered through a lot of her struggles and turned her struggles into triumphs. Not that many people can do that, guys. Not that many people can do it. When I thought about it, I was like, man, if that were me, I probably wouldn't have made it. I probably wouldn't have been able to take all that pressure, all these lecturing from my dad and all of this. Like, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that. It takes a strong person mentally to do it. You know what I mean? But then a lot of people say to me that all the things that I'm going through in my life, they probably wouldn't be able to do it and handle it. So I think I'm taking credit away from myself by saying I wouldn't have been able to do that. I guess you just don't know what you're going to be able to do unless you're actually in those shoes. You know what I mean? You'll know what you got to do or what you're going to have to suck up and do. You don't know what you'll have to do unless you're in those shoes. So if I was in her shoes, I probably would have been able to pull it off and do the same things that she did. But I'm going to just give her credit where it's due and just say that she was just mentally strong, mentally tough. She was a beautiful person. She had a beautiful heart. And she's one of a kind. You know what I'm saying? I don't think there will never, ever be another person like her on this earth again. And if it is, I won't see it in my lifetime. You know what I mean? All right, well, this is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Write your comments down below in the comment section. You know, just spam the comment section. Talk about how you feel. Tell me about you guys' thoughts, you guys' opinions and whatnot. This is the last video. I will not be doing no more truths, harsh truths of the Selena story. This is the it video. There will be no more. So for those of you who say, well, do another video, it won't be no more because I didn't literally read through the whole book. I didn't read the entire book, but I read all the meaty details throughout the whole book. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I see you guys in my next video. We'll probably do a Q&A about Selena, or I'll come up with another idea of a new video to do about Selena. See y'all next time. Peace.